The HBO Harry Potter reboot feels like it's fallen into the trap of all other modern Hollywood adaptations. The reboot and those working on it promise faithfulness to the source material. And yet, audiences are already feeling betrayed. And that's a problem. Hello there, and welcome to today's video. Now, Hollywood is in an interesting place at the moment. Gone are the days of creative, risk-taking ideas. Instead, we as an audience have been subjected to a litany of safe, risk-averse adaptations, reboots, sequels, prequels, and reimaginings. And that shouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, right? I mean, for years, fans of various books and entertainment media have craved live-action adaptations of the things they love. And at last, Hollywood has been providing it as it offers an incredible opportunity to tap into a built-in fan base and to eliminate some of the guesswork on high-risk projects. The movie-making business is, after all, an expensive and risky investment, especially if that investment doesn't see any returns. And, whether for good or ill, HBO has built their brand around live-action adaptation. So it only makes sense that when their business is in deep financial struggle, they've turned to the reliable cash cow that is the Harry Potter IP in order to try and right the ship. Yet, for all the love the Harry Potter series has around the globe, fans of the franchise are still hesitant about whether this adaptation will be everything it promises to be. And I'm going to tell you why. The closer we get to the release date of the new Harry Potter reboot, the more actors and producers and, everyone involved begins to open up about the filming and production process. We've begun to get information from the cast over how they feel about their roles, what filming is like, and even some behind-the-scenes photos from set. And the vast majority of these quotes and talking points all paint the same message. This adaptation will be absolutely faithful to the source material. More so than the movies, what with their limited runtime.
This new Max original series will dive deep into each of the iconic books that fans have continued to enjoy for all of these years, said Casey Bloys, chairman and CEO HBO and Max Content, about the project, which he also assured fans would be a faithful adaptation. Whatever the case, Bloys promised that as the company embarks on its new Harry Potter adventure, we do so with the full care and craft of this franchise. Max's commitment to preserving the integrity of my books is important to me, and I'm looking forward to being part of this new adaptation, which will allow for a degree of depth and detail only afforded by a long-form television series, said Rowling in a statement. When asked by a fan if she's writing the series, Rowling replied, "No, but I've worked closely with the extremely talented writers." Recently speaking with Times Radio, the Willow alum teased HBO's forthcoming TV adaptation of the best-selling novels as very faithful to the J.K. Rowling source material. Naturally, the long-form nature of television allows the show, slated to debut in 2027, to tackle the numerous characters and plot lines that were understandably cut from the movies.
There was something about these quotes, though, that bothered me. I couldn't quite work it out until I read an article about Johnny Flynn, the actor taking over the role of Lucius Malfoy from Jason Isaacs. Now, the following quote comes from an article from The Hollywood Reporter, where Flynn talks about playing Lucius Malfoy.
Obviously, there's quite a lot of stuff around Joe Rowling. I suppose that's been quite interesting to navigate, the conversations there. But all important conversations to have. The people working on this are really, really great, and create a really special atmosphere. Francesca, the showrunner, and Mark Mylod, and the various directors. There's such care. I'm basically not in the first book. Lucius is hardly in book 1 at all, but I'm in the first series. So it's quite a thing to go do a day and then have a month or so off, and come back, and everybody's got these really tight relationships. But it's such a welcoming environment.
It's an interesting quote for a lot of reasons, but it really helped crystallize why the earlier quotes about faithfulness to the source material were bugging me. We have heard this type of talk about faithfulness to the source material before. A lot. It's the language most often used in promoting these modern adaptations that Hollywood has been spewing out. But there's a problem. See, Lucius Malfoy isn't present in the first Harry Potter book at all. So, if Johnny Flynn has already shot scenes for Lucius Malfoy in the first season of HBO's Reboot, then surely this can't be a faithful adaptation like fans have been promised, right? At this point, I think it's pretty important to address a fundamental necessity of on-screen adaptation. Change. Changing the source material to better suit a live-action adaptation is not always a bad thing. In fact, it's often a necessity for an adaptation to survive and thrive in a new medium. One of the best examples of this in modern media is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Often regarded as one of the greatest movie trilogies ever created, and lauded as an adaptational masterpiece by most audiences, bar a few die-hard Tolkien fans who just wouldn't have accepted any changes made to Tolkien's masterpiece. But it offers an interesting insight into how adaptations need to be changed for the screen, as much differed when bringing the pages of the book to life. Lord of the Rings succeeded as an adaptation because nearly every single choice made when changing the material was done intentionally, and with the spirit of the original work still intact. The DNA of the books is hard-baked into the movies, and so even seemingly massive changes, like the Eye of Sauron line being personified in the movies, well, they use that DNA to recreate the look and feel of the books. But more importantly, because of this, the changes still feel true to Tolkien's world. But, it's still not a perfect adaptation. The character of Faramir in the movies is despised because of the changes made to his character. See, in the books, Faramir is a good, steadfast man of impeachable morals who never wavers nor changes. But the writers for the movies felt that he needed an arc to better connect him with the audience. Now, this change was done to meet the writer's own sensibilities and ideas of storytelling, and as such, it lacks the DNA of the books, making the decision stick out like a sore thumb and generating backlash for the character within the fanbase. And using this example of Lord of the Rings, we can see that literary accuracy isn't the goal. In fact, adaptations often need to change to better suit the new medium they're being adapted into. But then, if change isn't the true issue, what is? Faithfulness to the source material has become a banner waved in front of the faces of fans to get eyes on a product that ultimately shares little of the core DNA of the source material. Modern writers, whether because they lack creativity themselves or because they've been hamstrung by risk-averse studios, now feel the need to change the material they're adapting to better fit their own ideals, rather than to elevate the source material to a new medium. But because these movies and series are being made to tap into pre-established fanbase, those involved have to try and assure fans that these new products are in fact what they want. And to do that, they've weaponized fan desire during promotional works. They promise faithfulness and doing right by the source material in order to get eyes on a product that is instead being used as a vehicle for a story they actually want to tell. And this is happening all the time, with one of the most blatant examples in recent years being Netflix's The Witcher. It was sold as a straight one-to-one adaptation of the books, with no changes necessary. The showrunner, Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich, even said before the first season's release,
"We really try to stick to a book a season," she elaborated. "We did combine some of the short stories for the first season, and there are things in the short stories that we want to continue to return to, because there were just too much good material to tell in 8 episodes. So, for instance, that's why we did A Grain of Truth at the beginning of this season, and it's our hope to keep peppering those in as we go."
These statements by Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich were made before the first season debuted, and were used to push the idea that fans of The Witcher were going to be receiving a faithful adaptation of the beloved book series. Instead, each passing season warped the original text further and further from what it was supposed to be. And the result was that Henry Cavill, the main actor for the series, and a massive fan of the books, ended up stepping away due to creative differences. although it has been rumored that he stepped away due to just how far the series strayed from the books he loved. But when Lauren was pressed to talk about the backlash the series was facing, she pivoted, saying,
This was also something Schmidt-Hissrich addressed, with the showrunner explaining that there's room for all three versions of The Witcher to exist. You have book fans, you have video game fans, and then you have fans that knew nothing about this world until the show existed. And the truth is, we can't choose one audience. We have to remember what we're doing, which is a television show, she told us. It is different than any other genre in any other form that you could tell this story, and we have to make the choices for that. We have 8 hours every season to tell these stories, and we're never going to be able to tell everything from the books. I also think there have to be changes that you make for adaptation just to make this story keep going forward. Season 1's the perfect example. Obviously, we leaned into the 2 books of short stories, but you can't just tell unrelated adventures in a season of television. Schmidt-Hissrich went on to explain, One of the things that I've talked a lot to the author about and a lot to fans about is that the books still exist. No one's taking the books away. No one's taking the video games away. I think everyone can have their version of The Witcher, and this is this version.
Adherence to the source material is often coupled with author involvement to present an image that the adaptation is going to please fans. But as soon as the product is released, fans are forced to see a massive swath of changes that have intrinsic consequences and ripple effects for the story being told by the source material. Gone are the talks of faithfulness. Gone are the talks with the author to ensure story fidelity. Now it's become about justifying her vision of the show. And the worst part is that she seems to believe that if the fans don't like it, they should just read the books. And the same logic appears again and again, in Rings of Power, in Wheel of Time, in Percy Jackson, even in, more classical literary adaptations like Wuthering Heights. Deviation isn't framed as necessity, but as moral correction. And that's a problem. But it's still not really the real problem at the heart of this discourse. The real problem behind modern adaptations is that they've stopped being about translating the source material into a new medium. Instead, adaptation has become about reinterpretation as ownership. And this is a pattern splattered across all modern adaptations. But this has consequences that the studios didn't anticipate. The biggest consequence that these studios are now going to have to reckon with is the truth. The truth is that Hollywood has been creatively bankrupt for a while now. And that creative bankruptcy has led to Hollywood becoming incredibly risk-averse. Studios are only willing to bet on and finance a sure thing. It's why we as an audience have been inundated with endless sequels, prequels, reboots, and reimaginings over these last few years. And look, whether you want to say the writers themselves are lacking creativity or if they're just unable to get studios to finance their original ideas, the consequence has been a loss of good adaptations, with writers instead using these adaptations as a vehicle for their ideas and their ideologies. But the problem in letting this happen is that stories getting adapted are now warped and twisted, whether intentionally or not. Now, a prime example is Papa Isidu's casting as Severus Snape. I'm going to get into this a lot more in a future video, but this kind of casting decision now carries symbolic weight it didn't used to. Not because audiences suddenly became fragile, but because trust in adaptation has already been eroded. And now, whether Papa Isidu was the best man to choose or not is irrelevant. There is always going to be an asterisk next to his name when we talk about him playing Snape. Ultimately, showrunners, actors, and producers talking about faithfulness to the original material has become a warning sign that the product itself will be anything but. Faithfulness has become a marketing technique to pacify an audience before they are inevitably disappointed. If you want to know how to spot a truly faithful adaptation, focus on how those involved speak. Listen to how the creators talk about the source material. Notice whether, the respect shows in their restraint, and watch whether they treat change as a necessity or as entitlement. Because if not, if they instead wave the word faithfulness in front of their audiences like a matador before a bull, if they use the author as a shield rather than a resource, the adaptation is doomed to failure, and there's nothing that'll be able to save it. But that's all I really got for you guys today. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What do you think about modern adaptations? Are you excited for the Harry Potter reboots? Let me know, and thank you for watching.